Welcome to this edition of the Imagery International podcast series. We hope you find it interesting. If you have colleagues or friends who'd benefit from this discussion, it can be downloaded at imageryinternational.org.
So welcome everybody to tonight's webinar on tools that we use with our guided imagery practice. My name is Maureen Killow and I'm the administrator for Imagery International. I also have my own private practice. I'm a fairly new practitioner. I've been doing this now for about 6 years. I'm a graduate of the Academy for Guided Imagery, certified through the National Guild of Hypnotists, and also through the Wellness Institute. So I am personally excited about tonight to not only share a few of the tools that have been really meaningful for me, but to also hear from all of you tools that you've discovered, because I think this is the real gold. So with that, I will pass it over to the co-host, Elaine Santos.
Hi, everybody. I am Santos, the membership chair here at Imagery International. Obviously, recognize lots of you. And I'm a health and wellness coach through the National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coaches, and I have a master's in integrative health studies. That's where I got to study with Leslie Davenport and get certified in transformative imagery, and that brought me to Imagery International. And I'm very excited about this topic. Maureen was like, I've always wanted to do this. We're like, let's do it. So we're gonna, like, I was thinking like just little kind of some structure is just that we will use, it's a round table, so it's very open. So maybe either the hand, like if you can just raise your hand, there's not a ton of us, so you can just raise your hand or use the hand raise option if you're Zoom savvy, like, so we can kind of keep track of that. So we're not talking over each other. To remember that, I mean, yeah, describe your tool, but maybe not like tell us like, you know, like keep it concise so we can just keep popping around and getting everybody gets to be heard. I think that's my general kind of ground rules here. Oh, I guess to keep it a little bit, that was what I put. I put general, not specific. Like, so if there's something you do and it's very specific, but not to go all the way down the rabbit hole of detail. So try to keep it a little more general so it can be utilized for different types of imagery or practitioners, just thinking about it in that way. And yeah, so I just want to kick it off now. So we will, I will start with Maureen's going to go first to tell us one of hers, but first I'll also tell you I have a Jamboard, so I was going to share that. I don't know if you know what it is. It's in Google, and it's just so I can type up, and it's like little post-its you'll see, so we can have it for later, like what showed up. And there's going to be a page about what are resources and tools you use. And I just put little headings. You do not have to follow them, but just as like jumping off springboard of like, maybe there's something you do before a session. Maybe there's something you do at the beginning of a session during the relaxation that's helpful. During, after, like, so I just kind of put those little headings there. And then I have another page of maybe you're here because you have hit a challenge and you're like, I would like to know if people have resources around the link. And I can put that as a topic there, because that is good for us to know at Imagery International, because then we can maybe see if that's something that will pop up in Imagine News or as a webinar spin-off. So I'm going to be collecting that. I'll share my screen for that as well. If we don't always like it taking up the space to see each other, let me know and I can always unshare and go back and forth. So we'll just keep a temperature on that. So, okay, now I would like to turn it over to Maureen to kick us off for sharing her first, you know, what's your favorite tool that's been coming up for you lately?
All right. I mean, you know, and it is hard like to come up with a favorite tool. I'm going to mention one thing before I tell you the one I'm going to bring up, but I recently got certified through HeartMath, and I find myself using the HeartMath, heart coherence, breath work all the time with clients, and I would highly recommend you guys get familiar with HeartMath. But so having said that, in my hypnotherapy world, if any of you guys are also hypnotists, you might know of the name a guy named Cal Banyan, and he has just produced a lot of really specific, valuable guidelines on how to conduct sessions. And one of the things that I got from him that I use in every session, particularly in the first sessions and often in subsequent sessions, but not always, is a set of questions. And this goes at the end of a session. So as I'm guiding them out of what I call their journey, which is the guided imagery, as I'm guiding them out and having them integrate and reflect before we get to the debriefing stage, I let them know that I'm going to read 2 statements to them and have them fill in the blank. And is that okay? And I have them agree, and they always say yes. And these are statements from Cal Banyan. So what I say to them to have them fill in the blank is, I know I've changed because now I know. And this is a beautiful tool because it lets them kind of integrate everything, and it's just surprising what they come up with. Even sometimes in sessions, I'm thinking, did they get anything at all out of this? Because maybe they're very quiet or I don't see a lot of expression, but it's always a real pearl. The other sentence is, I know I've changed because now I feel. And so that is the tool, my first tool that I am sharing with you guys tonight.
I love that, Maureen. Can you tell me the name of the person again?
Cal is the first name, and Banyan, Banyan, Cal Banyan.
Cool.
Maureen, can you repeat the second sentence?
I know I've changed because now I feel.
And the first one, Maureen, was now because?
I know I've changed because now I know.
Use that in coaching too. I think those are
Do
really
you?
rich. No, but I will.
Oh,
So-
no, it's just, I can't tell you how valuable. And, maybe I think it's certainly valuable for them, but I tell you what, it's valuable for me because it allows me to pose the question, well, what did you get out of this? And so I really get enriched by hearing how they complete those 2 sentences. So with that, I will lobby the ball back to you, Elaine, and let you go next to share your favorite or outstanding tool that you use in your coaching or imagery practice.
With imagery, I've been thinking about this. Recently, I became trained in Yoga Nidra, and my teacher there is Jennifer Reese, and she taught me a lot of mudras, which are like hand kind of like postures in yoga. And I really like bringing that in before imagery work, where we will do a mudra. And one of my favorite ones is Adhi Mudra, which is just a loose fist, like your fingers wrapping around your thumbs. And it's a very calming sensation to have that. And it's very grounding. So it's nice to be able to get people grounded and calm before the imagery session. And she often has affirmations with it. And this one is something like, I'm always calm in the center of my being. So then we'll say that together 3 times and then to go into the relaxation. So I have really started utilizing that more in the kind of pre-grounding session, because especially in groups when you don't know people super well and you can't attend to them individually or over Zoom, I like to have that exercise to have beforehand to hopefully get us all grounded together and have a successful session. So that's something that I'm finding really fun to play around with. So let's see how now hand raising can begin. Do you want me to unshare so we can see the hand raises maybe? Or Maureen, are you able to see everybody?
Yeah. And Darcy looks like she's got something.
Yeah, hi. Elaine, what was that phrase you use again, please? Could you repeat that?
Mm-hmm. I am always calm in the center of my being.
Okay, thank you.
And I will add that to our board, so we'll have it for later too.
Good.
And, please share anything and if you have any specific questions or anything that hasn't worked for you in your practice, that can always come up during tonight as well and see if we can do some problem solving. But I know there's got to be more tips that you guys have. Oh, great. Ariel, you're right. You got to unmute, Ariel.
Hi, everyone. My background with guided imagery is through nursing, although I'm not nursing any longer. I had a lot of experience with it and it comes naturally to me. So what the tools that I use, first of all, are relaxation. My sessions are generally 90 minutes and I do a head to toe relaxation. I find that the deeper the person can relax and I can relax, the deeper we can go into the intuitive energy imagery experience. And I, as an intuitive, my channel for receiving information is body to body. And even though it's remote, through Zoom, I still feel it. And so I can feel where the person's energy is blocked and I can help them or invite them to relax that. The work that I do with guided imagery is to combine astrology. Since 2000, there have been many new planets discovered, and I work with 5D, the fifth dimension. I just published a book on 5D, and I work in 3 sessions. The first one is information, the second is intuition, and the third is integration. So in the first session, we talk about their chart and the 5D planets particularly. And then in the second session, we talk about the 5D planets that they want to work with. So we do the guided imagery, and then we go out into deep space and we connect with the planets. My life philosophy is that our universe is bidirectional. The same is with our house plants and our pets. We talk to them, we engage with them. It's the same with the planets. So I engage them, and the experience is quite profound. I love it. People seem to love it. The challenge is spreading the word and getting people to know about it and the benefit of it. So that's what I do.
Beautiful. How long do you do the relaxation for?
Generally, I do the relaxation for 30 minutes, 25 to 30 minutes, because it's a felt experience. It's an embodied experience. And the more the person can relax, the deeper we can go. And that's what I've found. And I've been doing this since the 90s.
So
Yeah.
Ariel, I'm going to put my conference chair hat on.
I am working on a proposal. Yes.
Oh,
I'm glad the deadline is the 22nd. I'm working on a proposal. Yes.
very good. Very good. I'll
And
take my
Ariel,
hat
what is your last name, Ariel?
Williams, Ariel
Thank you.
Williams.
Thank you.
Hi, Darlene.
Hi, I have a question for Ariel. What did you say happens in the session number 3? So you use 3 sessions?
It's integration. And that often ends up being more guided imagery. I have a questionnaire at the beginning of what do they want from this work and what are they working on. And I ask them if they've ever had guided imagery before, and if they have a meditation practice, and if they've ever had an astrology reading. And so we do the first session of information where we look at the birth chart with in the way that I look at a birth chart with specific focus on the 5D planets. And then in the second, it's the guided imagery. And the way that I describe it, because that's what happens, is it's a direct experience of self-love, that the participant can know that they are loved by the cosmos. It's just extraordinary. And so the third session is bringing that all together. And there's often, you know, I don't like to work just in one session. That's not enough, you know, so the 3 sessions gives us some depth. And in the third session, they're really in touch with what is the block. And so we often do more guided imagery specifically about unlocking that block or releasing that block.
And Ariel, how do you describe your services to your clients when you're advertising or promoting yourself?
Well, I just worked on a landing page, and it's up on my website, and I posted it to Facebook and a couple of places on Facebook and LinkedIn. And so it's all there's a in-depth description on this. It's basically a sales landing page. Yeah, but
do you call yourself a guided imagery practitioner? Do you call yourself an astrologer? Like, how do you describe to your clients what you do so they know what services to expect?
Well, I describe myself as an intuitive, basically, because
Okay.
the guided imagery is intuitive. It's like I through the body to body connection. First of all, I work with embodiment. I have worked with the lunar cycles and embodying the lunar cycle as the timer instead of the clock on your wrist or the clock on the wall. That our body is the timer, and my direct experience is body to body. I feel it. So I identify mostly as an intuitive who works with intuitive guided imagery and intuitive astrology.
Oh, great. Thank you for clarifying. That's great.
Yeah. Thanks for all your questions.
I have to make a joke, Ariel. I couldn't help thinking as you were talking that you're just really out there, way out there. And then you said the landing page, and I thought, oh, how appropriate.
Exactly. Yeah.
She actually led one of my Monday meditations, and it was groups, and it was fabulous. Yeah, she's really intuitive and was wonderful.
Yeah.
Sounds intriguing.
Yeah, Ariel, you could say I'm an out there intuitive.
Yes, exactly. I'm so far out there they don't know me.
Yet.
Thank you.
Great, Patty. Please share. You've got to unmute.
Yep. Just waiting for somebody else, but I figure I'll just put it forward. Yeah, I'm Patty Vargas. I'm a graduate of Atlantic University. I have my master's degree in transpersonal psychology. I also have a graduate certificate in integrated imagery hypnosis, and I am certified through NAF as well. I have I don't have an active practice right now. Ever since COVID, it's been kind of, I had to give up my office. I couldn't pay for an office and have people come in and stuff. So I gave up my office. So I'm kind of trying to do it from home, but it's not working. But I was busy, very busy during COVID writing a book.
Oh.
So I'm also published. I also wrote an article for the Imagine News, and that's what I wanted to talk about today, was the use of imagination when people get stuck. And I discovered this technique with a client who used cannabis on a regular basis. And I found that people who use that or use antidepressants or use anti-anxiety medications sometimes have a difficult time bringing up imagery. they have a tough time doing that. So, and sometimes they're just nervous. Sometimes they don't know what to expect. So this one gal was just having a really hard time. So I just sat back and went, okay, what do I do? And intuitively, intuitively, it came up, have her tell you the story. So I said, okay. Her goal was let me go back and say that her goal for the session was to find a relationship, a long-term loving relationship, and, you know, to have a family and to, you know, set up a home and a family with this person. And so I said, okay, well, tell me a story about that. Just make it up. It doesn't have to be true. Just make up the story. Just tell me the story. And so she did start telling me the story. And as she did that, you could see her visibly relax. She just relaxed. And then pretty soon that story actually became a past life experience. And so she was able to just glide right into that past life experience and finish up the session, just as though, you know, it was always meant to be that way, which of course it was. But that was part of my article in the Imagine News, not this last, but the last.
Yeah, winter. No, that was a really interesting article. Yeah.
Thank you. And so if you guys want to go back and read that in the archive, I also used it on another client and have used it quite a bit. But that has helped. And I don't always have that. Normally I have the clients who, you know, you can't get them to shut up. They just go on, and I'm like that too. When I'm regressed, I can tell you a whole story. You don't even have to prompt me. I just keep right on going. So, but I found that to be a very useful, because it takes the pressure off them, they feel, because they're not getting images and they're embarrassed or nervous about it or something. And if they just kind of tell you a story, you know, we tell stories to children at night to get them to go to sleep, right? It relaxes them. So that's one of the things that I do. Another thing that I enjoy using is an anchoring process. At the end, when I'm integrating, I like to integrate what they're feeling, integrate what they learn. And I ask them, what did you learn from this session? And they'll tell me, and I'll say, okay, I'd like to anchor. What are you feeling about that? I'd like to anchor that. And sometimes I use their favorite color or a flower or something that they will see every day. I said, I'm gonna have you imagine that item or that color, and I'm gonna have you anchor the feeling so that when you see that, it brings it back to you.
So this is really cool. So the stories. So, how do you bring it up? Are you saying like, tell me a story of why they're there for the session? Is it based on that subject? Okay.
I try to use their goal for the session though. Okay. With this young lady, the goal was to find out why she was in a string of relationships that weren't working. And she wanted a relationship that worked with a man, you know, and married or in a long-term relationship, which they are now. It worked, yay. But and they have 2 beautiful children now. But you know, the question was, if you're in a relationship, what does that look like to you? Tell me the story of what that looks like to you. Describe it in detail. How does it work for you? And that's when they begin to tell that story, and then all of a sudden it just becomes part of their imagined reality.
Okay, I think they call that like ideal imaging. Yes.
Yeah.
I really liked that anchoring idea, because in an imagery session we can have such a powerful thing happen, and then we're like on with our day. So it's like good to to anchor it like with something that you'll see, like a real tangible something. I like that. So then those, what you learned and like what you felt, that really good feeling. I have a coaching client, I can't do imagery with because it's like through a company, but he's needing spaciousness. And I was like, just start thinking about a time when you had a lot of spaciousness and see if there's a moment there that you can bring that it's inside of you still. Like, just because you're not like in like the field or the mountains or wherever, and you're in your cramped apartment that you just moved into with your 1-year-old, like you need to try to like that anchor. I really like that to kind of.
Well, and the integration doesn't stop with the end of the session.
Yeah.
It can go on for weeks. It can go on for months. And I tell them that. And I said, you'll see a movie. You'll look at a billboard. You'll hear a song, and it'll bring it back to you. And I have had clients who came back to me, gave me feedback later and said, this happened, and I remembered this, and I remembered that. And I've actually had clients also who did some research and found themselves sort of, historically in the historical records of what was going on at that time, that it was all very feasible. I said, yep. Okay. Because you can talk to them about the nature of reality and that time is a human construct and blah, 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 blah. And they're they're not ready for that. But, that helps them to again, anchor the experiences if they find out for themselves. But this is something that really can be true.
That's really useful. Thank you for sharing.
Patty, I love your offering of telling a story. That gives me so much freedom in my own life. I'm gonna tell my own story. I'm gonna make up my own story. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And put up your book so we can see the name of it. And
well, it's inverted. It's knowing.
Okay.
Knowing, and I'll put it in the chat. Knowing an empath's guide to intuitive development.
Awesome.
Okay, and it's available on Amazon, and it's published by Balboa Press. I'll be doing a book signing in Turlock on May 1st, and hoping to get another book signing at a local bookstore to get this done. But I wrote it in conjunction with actually one of my former clients. We became friends, and she said, hey, you want to write a book together? And we wrote a book together, and at this point we are writing a sequel.
Oh, very cool.
Awesome.
Nice.
I'll type it into the chat.
That's
Thank
great.
you.
If just anyone else has tips around that kind of the client feeling stuck or not having imagery come up, like any other tools around that, because there's like telling the story. Is there anything else that popped into people's minds?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I could go next, I guess. I'm a certified advanced holistic coach and also a practitioner, advanced holistic practitioner. I've been doing the work for 30 years. So to me, the most important modality is being present with a client and really fully listening, taking in, holding that space of safety, and then moving wherever I feel that client is needing to go, wanting to go, finding their own insights. I went to the Academy of Guided Imagery 30 years ago, so I've been doing the practice a long time. It is my most favorite modality. I have many, but I love it, and I love how it creates the foundational piece that so many other things can come in with it as a blend. Maureen mentioned HeartMath and the work from there, and getting our heart in coherence. And I have a few clients where just doing imagery with that HeartMath component is such a wonderful polyvagal regulator that when they're in high stress states and it's difficult for them to even land in a place where they can get into body sensing, that it helps them really self-regulate. And literally, if we're working together with it, we're co-regulating. But I just so truly have enjoyed several of the heart math things. I've not done the whole program yet. There's a new one that's for trauma-informed work, which is a huge place that I've been studying now for the last year and a half, is to go deeper into trauma-informed work, somatic work. And in our academy, we did learn somatic work and imagery. But I'm also finding even a greater deepening and just some of the ways in which we can use our wording that is an opportunity for opening in spaces when it's there to evolve. I know it's hard to explain it, but I've studied the positive neuroplasticity, which is what I brought in a couple of years ago, the integration of doing imagery and positive neuroplasticity, really bringing it into the body, fully feeling it, letting that feeling and that energy grow in a way that gives them a sense of solidness. I love doing EFT. I've even done imagery with emotional freedom technique, which is tapping, and I never thought that would enter in, but I find that imagery just comes up in the most incredible places. It just finished learning a process called internal relationship focusing. Some of you may have heard of it. And it is very similar to interactive guided imagery, although it's mostly the person doing all their own internal sensing and dialoguing, and the companion is what they refer to, says very, very little, and it's mostly reflection. And in the way that it was taught, doesn't feel as natural to me as does the interactive guided imagery. However, I think that my way of deepening the internal relationship, speaking and noticing what's in the tissues, because if the issues are in the tissues, what is it that those different parts really want us to understand, hear, know, sense, feel, for its healing is remarkable. I tend to blend so many things. I never know what's going to come up for a person. I just love to sit with a person and feel. I'm very much an intuitive. I get intuitive downloads all the time. Sometimes I share, sometimes I don't. Sometimes they're relevant to the person, sometimes they're not. They're more for me to hear. It doesn't really matter. I figure the person will know if that has any meaning. I've been studying now for about 4 years family system constellation work, which is mind-blowing in itself, to look at what stands behind us, in our generational, how it affects our epigenetics and how it gets expressed. How we express in the world may not be ours, but may have come from our heritage. And that isn't just our own genealogy, but it can be intertribal, it can be the land, it can be so many things that we can bring forward into our being. So when we can work in deepening the understanding of that, and a lot of what I do with that is in the mind's eye and in working in imagery with it. And it's so powerful in what it can move, if that's what resonates for that person. I know I'm not remembering all the pieces, but I don't know. I just work with a person. I never know when I start a session where it will go. And I guess I'm always in awe, because I think imagery just, when you can see someone connecting into their own inner knowing, whether it's through a felt sense or a thought that comes into their being that has meaning, or a memory that they're now embodying that brings them joy, whatever it is, if it helps them with their grieving, their dying, their birthing. I've used imagery for a woman who was so afraid that she couldn't go through her birthing process. and she was scared she would have to have a C-section. And so we worked just with the imagery of what that meant to bring a life in and sensing her body and so forth. Interesting thing is she did have to have a C-section, but she didn't go through it in fear because of the imagery work that we had done. She was able to see another way of bringing life into the world, and it had its own sense of peace, which, you know, I didn't know that till later when she shared after the experience. But I tell people all the time what an amazing tool it is.
Jen, I wanted to say, like, I love what you shared, and I was just really, a couple of things that just popped up was like how much trust you have for the process. Like you're trusting this imagery process and you're trusting your intuition, and that's really really fun to hear. You have so many interests and able to weave things back to imagery kind of anchors all your knowledge, and it's nice to know that like what you let those tools surface for each person. And so just, I don't know, being newer and like just starting my certification process, it's like, how do you use this stuff? And it's like, it will unfold, like let it do its thing.
It does. I mean, I'm guided a lot of times to take on some other new thing. I never know what, I mean, I studied metaphysical in the 80s. Little did I know what it would bring forth for me in this stage of my life and the work I'm doing. I forgot to mention energy work. I'm a certified healing touch practitioner, and I have clients who resonate with their energy and talk chakra language. This wasn't done 20, 30 years ago, and yet profound healing can happen just today. A person talking about her chakra, it's being blocked, it's affecting her speech, and yet we went into her traditions, her cultural traditions of Native American and relationship to what is in nature that speaks to her through the imagery. The rock spoke to her, and then coming back to the body sense felt issue, which was her mother. Her mother's energy was living in there. So there we were able to start some family system constellation work. And it's, who would have known that's not something to design. It's something that it hard to put in words, but it's a privilege to hold that space and to be the companion, to be the person that just sits and holds that container for others to come to their own inner knowing and their own inner healing. So thank you.
Thank you. It is sacred, isn't it?
That's what the tears are.
Mm-hmm.
It is sacred work.
Thank you for sharing, because like 30 years of course, there are so many modalities that you've studied, and you're talking about how you weave them all and blend them, and it just comes up intuitively. And that's exactly what this meeting really is about, is to try to understand what others are using and to share what we are using to give us all a broader tool base. So yeah, thank you for that. All right, we haven't heard from Darcy or Patricia. I know you guys have something. Nancy, Marlene, Karen. You guys have something.
I'd be happy to share.
Thank you, Nancy.
So I think my background is very different than most people's, because I grew up in a family where my mother was the oldest of quite a few children with ailing parents. So she had to quit school at a very young age and take care of the children. And then as the parents aged, more, and dad couldn't work, her dad couldn't work. She had to get a job. So she's this very young person having all this responsibility. But one of the things that she brought with her that was really rich for me is that it wasn't the American ways. It was her parents' ways from Europe. And there was no doctors, never went to a doctor. Didn't need to, because she grew whatever we needed, or she sent us out into the fields to get what we needed. And so then that's how I grew up. And one of the things that was a ritual in our family was that every morning we were asked what our dreams were. Mm-hmm. And so we all talked and shared our dreams, but she also told us the dreams of our ancestors. So like I knew my grandparents, and although I never met my grandparents, they were all gone before I was born, but I knew them through their dreams and through the dreams before them. So that became, like my introduction to a very unusual life of never seeing a doctor and taking care of everything with herbs and food that you did at home. And, that's the way I was raised. And then in 1980s, I was doing, it was actually in the 70s and 80s, I was doing dream workshops on the East Coast and then the Midwest. And one of the people that did the dream workshop told me that they wanted me to come with them on a trip to Arizona. And I asked my own dreams and I meditated and I said, sure, I'll do that. And it was at the holidays. And I had a dream before we left that I should take my Guatemalan clothes. And so I took them. And on Christmas Day, I was putting the outfit on. It's a layered outfit, and I was putting it all on. And we got a call from someone, we're in Arizona at the time, and we get a call from someone inviting us to a ceremony that's going to be done that night for an Anglo woman by a Guatemalan man, medicine man, and he's going to do that ceremony. And there I am, dressing myself in these Guatemalan clothes I didn't know why. And that week we went to see her, we thought, and he was also there. I traveled with this woman, from the Midwest, and we thought we were just visiting her, but he was there too. And I just turned to him, and without my thinking, it wasn't me even, I just turned to him and I said, will you teach me? And so then that started a journey of me working with Native Americans, working with him and Native Americans. And that's a dream world. That's definitely an image world. It's definitely, it made so much sense to me because it's how I was raised to think. It's almost like a lens through which I was looking. And so I could see things that were invisible to a lot of people's eyes, but my mother had trained me, but I didn't know she was training me. So, so I've had no formal imagery training. I've lived with Native Americans, and then I lived in India, and that too is a very image-packed world. And so I bring all that. I bring all that I've learned and the ways that I can help people. I do know heart math, and I studied heart math, and I do visualizations, and I love when they tell stories. And some people have a really hard time getting into visualization. One of the things I wanted to share with all of you is something called Visuals Speak. Visuals Speak. I'll write that in the chat too, so you can see it. And there's all different sets. This set that I just showed a card from is an icebreaker kit. But you can use any of the different kits. They have different kind of energy around them and different uses. But I have people that can't do imagery and find it hard to move into that world, from either resistance or it's unfamiliar and uncomfortable, whatever it is. I have them pick cards that will tell them what it is they want to tell me. So rather than telling me words, I ask for the pictures. And then they put the pictures out, and then I ask them to speak the story of the pictures so that they can start to help me. And it's a really sweet way to take people that are a little distant from their inner self or their expanded self to move in another way. And so then that's really, really, really sweet. And
So these are cards with various images on the other side?
yeah, and the images are actually, this is really interesting. There's a lot of research so that the images that are in a set actually are very carefully chosen. And once you start to work with them, you can actually see that, you know, and feel that and experience it. And it doesn't have people narrow down. It actually has people expand. And then that's what's so good about them. So just check it out on the website and just see, you know, if it makes any sense to you.
Nancy, are cards part of the visual speak?
Visuals speak. It's an S at the end of
Okay.
visual. Visuals
Okay.
speak.
Okay.
Yeah. And I am certified. I'm actually a master certified coach. And so I use everything I know in a very same way that Jan does, you know, that however I'm called to use it and whatever they're open to. So some people know lots and lots about me. Other people know a little bit about me, and whatever works for them. And sometimes I just ask, you know, would it be all right if I read you a story?
Mm-hmm.
And I do have to tell you that I wanted to tell you, I do a lot of storytelling with young children, but I love this story. It's an adult storybook. It's called The Lesson. It's called The Lesson, and it's by Carol Lynn, Lynn Pearson, Pearson. And it's a story about a young boy who goes to school. And he likes school because there's lots of things to do, but then the teacher gives a problem and it's 1 + 1. He can do that and he's so excited. But then the problems get harder and the problems get harder. And I have been touched by the depth that has gone into men, particularly, that wouldn't be open to expanding themselves as much as we naturally as women expand ourselves. And so the lessons get deeper and deeper and deeper as he gets older, you know, like if you have to move away and you can't take your fish and you're going to lose your best friend, and, you know, like, what do you do? Do you run away? Do you do drugs? What do you do? You know, so the problems keep getting harder. And I won't tell you the end of the book because I'd love you to discover it yourself. Mm-hmm. So I do tell stories to children, to adults.
I thank you for sharing that background of like sharing the dreams, that ritual with your family. I really like hearing that, and like the sharing the ancestors' dreams, so powerful, and that you've kept that trust in that knowledge base that we have every night we can have access to, but so few of us know how to access that, you know? So it's like, you're like, oh, it's so natural to do that. And I love the storytelling too. I wrote that down. I like the cards. I like that idea of the image. That's really cool. I'm going to look up those decks. In my group, I do a winter group and a spring group. And in winter, well, mostly winter group, I use a book called, and I'll put it on here. It's the Book of Beasties. It's the last name is Bamford, and she's a MD turned shaman. And so it's a book of just animals, spirit animals, and like her descriptions. Yeah. And it is like a fun image to bring in. Like I'll be like, let's do our winter beastie. Like who's gonna, what power, like what qualities are we gonna get from this? But how does it work into your winter vision? And recently I had them also imagine being that animal to see what qualities would come out. So it is fun to do like the cards or something like that to get people.
Yeah, it reminds me of the I took a series of healing shame workshops, and one of the components that this couple used was, well, I guess I call it play therapy, but like so there would be objects. So you'd have like a rock and a blanket and a bottle, or just all kinds of objects that you collect, I guess, like from the Goodwill, right? And so you would have the client go through this box of stuff and kind of retell the story on how it is for them, the situation, by laying these objects out and how they lay them out in proximity to each other, and the different symbolism of these objects. And I've actually never done it. It's been on my list that I want to do that, but the cards kind of remind me a little of that. That's kind of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nice thing about the cards is you can do them when you're not with someone too. You can do them online. So that's one of the advantages of cards.
Wouldn't the client have to have the cards on their end?
You can actually set that up so that you can do that, right? So that we're both seeing the same cards, right?
Yeah, so they would have to have a set of cards on their end.
Right.
They would have to, okay. Yeah. Neat.
Well, I don't know how we are on time. Are we okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
I would love to follow up with what Nancy has just talked about, because I love to work in what we call the dream tending tradition. And when I'm dream tending with somebody, one of the ways, the way we open is that instead of sitting across from my client, we will sit at a little bit of an angle as if there were a third person sitting in the room, therefore allowing space and inviting the dream figure in. And we always start that conversation by lighting a candle to bring in the dream space, to actually invite the ambiance in, and opening up that literal space with our seating, and then asking who is visiting now. And so the client will tell the dream, and frequently tell it from reading from a journal. And then I'll ask that they close their journal and, take a nice deep breath, get settled, and tell the dream with their eyes closed. And what's wonderful about that is that you'll hear the same story, but with eyes closed, they will discover different visitations, different images that have come. And for those people who don't see in images, I really encourage color or light or mood or movement. So that figure you've just described, who came to you last night in a dream, if you are not able to visualize them or see them in that place behind closed eyes, how do they move, and what do they have to tell you about through their movements? So it's creating the dream space. And then I just have to mention that when working with people or working with my own dreams, we're invited to collect little figures that might remind us of a dream, and therefore then create a council. And Nancy, what you were talking about with the visuals, creating a council. So we might have a little tray, looks like a little altar, with maybe a dozen figures on it sometimes. And then we go into a conversation of a figure with another figure. A dream that I might have had 5 years ago that was significant, that lives on my dream altar. Having a conversation with a dream figure that just came last night. How do they know each other? And what reminded me the most of this was that they move. Like, sometimes we've got one way off to the side because they're not part of a particular conversation, or we've got them coming in together, more closely relating to each other. That's a little bit more of the advanced dream tending technique. But I want to offer that in closing, I'll do what I offer as medicine, which is to say, so for the next week, I'm thinking or feeling into what can we do to help keep this figure alive or this learning alive? Like that question, Maureen, you were talking about at the beginning. I know I've changed because because now I know. Or what have we learned? So if we can offer something for the dreamer to stay in touch with for the next week, or sometimes even a month, to help keep what's been learned alive and integrated into moving forward in their lives. So that was really fun to talk about. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's like that anchoring that, Patty was talking about, to anchor that in for the coming weeks and months and days. Yeah.
Yes.
That's beautiful. This dream tending tradition. It's just so juicy.
Yummy. It's
So
yummy.
wonderful. I love it. We are nearing the end, but we can have another person. I will show you really quick though what I have been up to, typing away, and I will edit this down and we'll share it. But look at all my post-its I got of everyone's stuff. So I'll clean it up. We will share this with everybody so you have access to it. I tried to grab questions that people said and get it. I'll make it a little bit easier to read. And then also at the end, if you have any topics as well of what comes up that can be, a challenge for people, or maybe something very specific, I wrote down when a client gets stuck, or how to use multiple modalities, because these are topics that we can maybe have another roundtable around, or do something with Imaginews, or who knows. We're Imagery International. We'll do all sorts of stuff with it. So if you have anything as well, idea-wise, that either you would like to share, or you're I think someone should share about this, or a topic, please shout it out or put it in the chat.
Thanks for putting that together. That's really cool.
That's
Isn't
gorgeous.
that nifty?
Yep.
I know at the academy they talked about when people would get stuck and they're I can't see anything or whatever, And so one of the things they shared with us to say to them, right, so, but if you could go somewhere really beautiful, if you could, I know you can't, but if you could, what might a beautiful place look like if you could,
Mm-hmm.
And so it's amazing how just that one little tweak will get them there, because we're all imaginative creatures. We can't not be. And so that was one of the things they shared with us.
I think also I have to agree with Jan, because I use a lot of different things and I don't always have names for what I use.
Mhm.
One of the things in EMDR, when someone gets stuck and they just don't want to move any further because the memory may be too traumatic at that particular time and you're not trying to re-traumatize, they have what they call a container. They have three different imaginary, I would say, using imagery techniques that they offer when you're going through the process. So the container is one of them. The light stream is the first one, and light stream. Oh, safe place. And with safe place, they come up with, it could be a past experience, it could be a feeling of some place they might like to be, it could be the beach, the mountains, or whatever, but they find their own safe space. And so when they get stuck, or they get in a place when you're doing the work, you can say, well, would you like to go to your safe space? Or they can tell you, this is something I'm not going to deal with right now. I need to put it in the container. And they've used their own imagination to come up with a container. One of my clients has it's a necklace, and on the necklace is it's similar to a locket, but it's it's not exactly a locket. She described it. And so this is unique to her. She went out and bought something that fit that. And so when she gets to a point, she'll just put it in there, whether she's processing with me or it's just something that comes up in her life that makes her anxious or, uncomfortable. She just literally imagines and puts it in that container that she has.
Oh, that's great.
Another one came up with it's a box. And I mean, she was very descriptive with it. And she did get to a point, she says, I'm not going to do this. I said, well, would you like to put it in the container? Yes. And she literally put it in the container so that it didn't have any more effect on her. And the light stream is usually using your imagination. Of course, I deal a lot with light, and it's just light coming down into your body, and you literally can feel it. So it's somatic as well as imaginary. And those are 3 imagery things that are used in EMDR that are not really talked about as far as imagery is concerned. But
Imagery always has a safe place. That's the whole.
Yeah.
Resourcing them is huge.
Definitely.
And we use a light with that,
Right.
enveloped or bringing in that sensation because it's so powerful, isn't it?
Yes.
Whatever color, whatever temperature, whatever they notice about it.
Right. And it could be any color they choose.
Right.
And interesting with EMDR, tapping can be used for the eye movement.
Mm-hmm.
It's I mean, that's what I mean when I say it's all integrated.
Right.
You learn, you can use with your clients. It doesn't matter what it is. And imagery is always going to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that container. That is wonderful. When a client isn't really ready and they need to let them put it in the container, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
I
then
love
you can
that.
go back and say, well, would you like to take something out of the container? Are they ready for it at that time?
That's a really good point. Wow, I like that. Yeah, I wanted to add on the resourcing because, as I've, coming through my learning and practicing and experiencing that just how vital resourcing a client is and really making sure they have that and even to the point of what I'm finding lately and recently is that sometimes resourcing him is enough, like that sometimes they don't need any more than that. We don't need to pick or try to do any therapy or figure it out. Like sometimes they just need a spa treatment for their mind, and so sometimes that can be enough. And that's one of the
Oh, I
tools.
love that image. Spa treatment of my mind.
That's one of the things I've found out that I'll leave you guys with. Does anybody have any parting gifts that they'd like to offer us before we close?
Thank you so much for doing this. It's been
Yay.
really helpful and enlivening and interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Well, if you guys would like to end on a very brief guided imagery, I'm happy to close us out on that.
Yes.
So one of the tools I mentioned earlier was heart math, and so with respect to that, let's just close our eyes and imagine breathing directly into your heart. Say hello to your heart. Feel the engagement that your intention brings when you shine the light on that heart with your breath. Slow down your breath just a bit and breathe a little deeper than normal, nothing too exaggerated. And you might want to just imagine that your heart is this big, beautiful green field. And here it is spring. And today, April 7th, 2022, we have gathered together and received a lot of gifts from each other, a lot of new ideas, and perhaps some tools we haven't heard of, or some practices that we may have heard of but are being reminded. So imagine these as seeds. And we're going to just tend our garden here in this field, and imagine in this fertile field just scattering the seeds, all the information we've gathered today. They're so valuable, these seeds. So tend them well. Plant them and imagine fertilizing and watering and really loving all of these ideas into fruition, knowing that now that they're planted inside of us, in our beautiful field, they will yield colorful tools to grace and beautify our practices with. So with that, knowing you can always come back to your garden anytime, bring your awareness back. And I want to first thank Elaine so much for being my willing partner in this adventure. And I want to really heartfelt thank to all of you. Your tips were just so diverse. And it's just so great to hear how each of us practice. So thank you guys all for that. And Elaine, did you have anything to close out on?
Just a follow-up thank you, Maureen, for planting this seed, getting it going, and having us all gather. And it feels like a small taste of like our conference to come, the vast world of imagery, to hear everyone's work, and that was very inspiring. So thank you everyone for coming and sharing. Know that there's lots of resources on our website at Imagery International of like past webinars and conference recordings and Imaginews articles, and please always consider offering more to those as well. Like we like to hear from
Like to the conference.
Yes.
That's what I was going to say, Jan. It would be nice to have something dealing with resources as part of our conference. We have not done that before. I know.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Patricia, how would you see that unfolding when you did that?
We'll start thinking about it.
Yeah, I'll start thinking about it, but I can see it as sort of the way it showed up in my mind was like a round circle of just sharing ideas and sharing how we do things, just like we did here.
Yeah.
Of those people that are interested, and then have a scribe so that we can keep a record of it. Maybe even have some demonstrations. If it's a workshop, we could demonstrate the way we do different things. So it's expand.
Well, I'm going to stop the recording, so thank you all.
Thank you for joining this Imagery International podcast. If you know of someone else who may benefit from this program, the podcast can be downloaded at imageryinternational.org. The music in this piece is provided by Shantha Shri, and you can learn more about him and his healing music at energymusic.com. That's ENERGI music.com. Find out more about our membership benefits, including our quarterly journal, at imageryinternational.org. Thank you for listening.